Hello everybody, this is Albert with Green Tea House. I hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to talk about why we as Americans and really we as human beings should really try to gravitate toward the greens and white teas. Now before we begin, if you haven't done so already, please come and visit us at the Tea House. Also subscribe and hit the notification bell so these episodes come fresh to you, even if you don't live in the Central Texas area, and post a comment. So, of course, Casey and I observe trends in the tea house, and we can also track like which teas are being purchased the most. And it's not uncommon to see when people come, they really gravitate toward two categories. Now we know there's 6 categories or families that come from Camellia sinensis, the tea plant, and there'll be an extra category that we will call the non-Camellia sinensis stuff, otherwise known as tisanes, otherwise known as herbals. So I would tell you that the majority of customers that come here gravitate toward 2 things. They gravitate toward black teas and tisanes. And why is that? Well, obviously it's because that's what they're most accustomed to. That's what they are drinking at home. That's what they've been drinking probably their whole life. They haven't been drinking yellow tea their whole life. They've been drinking blacks. And we've talked about it in the History of Tea playlist, why that is. Much of our patrimony, for lack of a better word, our tea history comes from England, because we were an English colony, right? And if you look, and we really talked about in that 4-part series on how England stole the tea plant from China, how really starting in the 1800s, black tea became the predominant tea in the West and in England. And so that's why, if you think of like what are the most famous teas on this planet, especially in the West, in Europe and in America, it's going to be what? English breakfast blends, Earl Greys, and the wide variety of high tea black teas, orange pekoe, for example. It's not going to be gunmaicha. So black tea is what people drink. And then herbals, well, because people have been drinking herbals, right? Who doesn't have chamomile in their pantry or maybe peppermint? So these are the 2 things that people gravitate toward. And I would strongly encourage, but in a charitable way, that we kind of gravitate toward the greens. Now, why is this? Because greens and whites are the healthiest categories that come from Camellia sinensis. Why is that? Well, if you look, the greens and the whites are the least oxidized. Green teas are 0% oxidized or broken down. White tea is about 5%, and white tea is only broken down because it's just plucked and left in the sun. So it arguably is the most pristine because it's not even kill-greened. It's not going to be fried, kill-greened in a wok like the Chinese do it, or steamed like the Japanese do it for the green teas. It's just plucked and left out. So these 2 categories have the highest amount of antioxidants, namely polyphenols, EGCG, catechins, and whatnot. So the anti-inflammatories that are so important. Like we think about inflammation like, oh, my knee hurts, but really there's constant free radical damage that's going on in the body all the time. And so our body's always fighting that. So if we have a diet that's high in things that are fighting this, that's good. So a lot of fruits and vegetables, for example. We know that vitamin C, vitamin E, these are antioxidants. So Camellia sinensis, especially the pristine categories, the greens and the whites, have the highest level of antioxidants in any beverage on the planet. And for this reason, we really need to gravitate away from the blacks and work our way to the greens, because it is the healthiest. The other aspects, you look at cognition, you look at memory. We've talked about theanine. Theanine is an amino acid, L-theanine, that you find in Camellia sinensis and you won't find it in coffee. And L-theanine has the effect of elevating alpha waves in the brain. And so what it does is it leads to focus and concentration, but also relaxation. This is why tea calms you. And what category has the most? Green tea. Now, black tea does have a decent amount of theanines as well. We've talked about it in that episode. But black tea, because it's 100% oxidized, doesn't have the levels of antioxidants that green and white do. So green has the highest level of all the things that are healthy for us, also helps with our metabolism, and it has a lot of theanine, which calms us down. And so look, if you're drinking tea all the time, maybe it'll keep you off of being on prescription drugs if you have depression or anxiety, because it just chills you. So I would just kindly encourage people. Yes, we eat what we know. Like, I love cookie dough ice cream, so that's one I'll always choose, cookie dough ice cream. But we need to really think about moving our taste preferences to the left of the table, to go from black to the greens, because they're just simply the healthiest ones. Also, another ancillary thing is that with greens, you typically don't milk and sugar those up. With blacks, because of their taste profile, because of the theorubigens and theoflavonoids, you can milk and sugar them. You can drink them straight. So that's another reason why if you get to green, you're going to wean off the milk and sugar. And we know that as Americans in our standard American diet, we have way too much of sugar. So that's another benefit. So what I would recommend is go from the blacks, especially if you only drink blacks your whole life. You can just jump into a green, like a world popular green like jasmine. But if you want to slowly work your way over, I would go from the blacks to the strongly oxidized oolongs, like Iron Goddess of Mercy, for example, and work your taste profile there. Because Iron Goddess of Mercy, Oriental Beauty, these are like 60% oxidized. And then from there, you can work your way even more to the left to something like white and to green. And when you get to the greens, if it helps you, do one of the blends, like a ginger green, or like a Moroccan mint, which is 50% peppermint, or ganmaicho, which is 50% toasted rice. If you find that the greens are a little too off of your taste profile. And lastly, when it comes to the greens, we know how important it is that you steep these the right way. So use the right temperature, about 175 degrees, and don't steep it past 3 minutes, because that's the ideal green. Because a lot of people drink blacks and they don't like greens because their experience with greens are being full boiled and steeping them too long, which makes them pretty bitter. So let's start moving our way to the green, because it's really, really good for our health. And if we have a diet and a drinking regimen which is a lot of green tea, maybe we can be like those people in Okinawa off the coast of Japan who live to be 95 years old. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. What's your history with green teas, white teas, or black teas? Until next time, take care and God bless.